show that I love despite numerous faults, which is ABC's Once Upon a Time. Now, I'll be doing a longer, more in-depth conversation podcast with a fellow YouTuber of mine, Lady Clea, later. But right now, I just wanted to give a brief kind of thoughts of how things have been going this past second season since the last video I made about Once Upon a Time. And I have to say that I have been both intrigued and frustrated with a lot of stuff that's happening in the show. I feel like Once Upon a Time suffers from being a 22-episode show. It drags so much. I feel like a lot of these shows, especially a show like this, just needs to be one 50-minute non-commercial break episode and lasts maybe 13, 15 episodes. It doesn't need 22 episodes. It adds so many tedious side stories that don't need to be there. I think that when I first started watching the show, I was interested in Ruby's story and Frankenstein's story and the Giant, but they don't need to be regulated into entire episodes. There doesn't need to be an entire episode about the Giant and the Jack and the Beanstalk shit at all. That doesn't help the meta plot, except to bring in the one thing about the beans. Now, if you had condensed that into maybe a 20-minute thing, spread out, that would have been fine. But a whole episode about that one issue when there are so many more important things going on in this world that we could be moving towards, it just doesn't seem necessary. The Korra backstory is actually interesting because we're actually dealing with Korra's story right now. With the Giant, that's probably not going to come up until much later. And I just feel you got that. Then you get the guy who's walking around, who crashed into Fairy Tale Land, into Storybrooke, who sees the magic going around. That appeared twice, and we know it's going to come up later. But it's these are the things to be addressed right now. The side stories are both frustrating and interesting. It's interesting because we get backstory, but it's frustrating because a lot of the stuff we already kind of know. We already know, for example, in this past episode, the Queen is dead. We know Snow White's not going to trade in the candle for her mother's life. What's interesting about it is how it connects with Korra's story. Now, if they just did those parts and not drag it out and just get to the main parts of the story, that would work fine. It's just you have these huge parts where just assumed what's gonna happen. The rest of it's kind of oh, let's just fill in the gaps. We won't have really anything important happen until the last 20 minutes of the episode, and everyone's already bored. It's frustrating because it could be done in a tighter way, but they just don't do it because they are trying to, make money, and it's it works better with 22 episodes in terms of these, huge networks. But it's also frustrating because sometimes not every show's stories is complemented by having these really long seasons. I feel the first half of this second season it had its issues, but it was strong because it had one solid goal for the characters to do. Now we have kind of all these other things mixing into it. It just seems very rushed and not really condensed, and it's frustrating to watch. With that being said, I am very emotionally invested in the show because I like a lot of characters. I love Aurora. I love Mulan, even though she is so her character is done horribly in the show. And I love Regina. Everyone knows that. I even like Emma. Even though I talk a lot of crap about her, it's more because of how she's written than who she is. I think that conceptually her character is really interesting because she's not as milquetoast as her parents, because she actually grew up in the real world and she's a really great straight woman to all the things going on in this world, which makes her more interesting than charming. But the writing wants her to be such that classical hero type character, so this is very jarring because there's nothing really, they're not making it interesting enough that always helps Emma as a character. And then there are a few things that I kind of feel have been frustrating this season, and I wrote them down. So, the adoption issues. So, during the Playfest, they had a question about this, and they were and the creator, or one of the writers, said that the Charmings don't hate Regina because she's a bad mom, but because she tried to kill them. First of all, duh. None of us who are friends of Regina, first of all, I'm a huge fan of Regina, but I know her faults. I know what she says as a character. I know her flaws acutely because I like her, I don't woofify her, but I get who she is. And yes, she deserves to be hated by the Charmings. But the anti-adoption issue isn't the fact that they hate her. It's the fact that it is kind of seen as though just because Regina is a bad mom and Emma is the biological parent, Emma has the right to suddenly take Henry away from Regina. And that's not the way it should be. Because we don't really know Henry and Regina's relationship before Emma came, except what Henry tells us, and he's an unreliable narrator because he has his own reasons for wanting those things to happen, even though we know Regina is evil. But even beyond that, Emma did a closed adoption. She has no more parental rights to Henry. She doesn't. And the writers have confirmed that Regina's adoption of Henry is legal. It's not about Regina being a good mother or being the mother that he deserves. She is his mother. And her authority as mother is undermined by people in a way that is counterproductive to her story and to her growth. Because the other issue I find, which ties into the adoption thing, is Regina's redemption arc. Now, I totally agree that I don't think her redemption arc should be rushed or anything like that, but I feel like the way they are structuring it is very frustrating because basically they want, and I think this is more interesting, the Charmings and other characters want Regina to be good. They don't give her the means to be good, but they want goodness to suddenly appear out of her just magically. And I think it's frustrating because we're supposed to see the Charmings as like almost pure good in some regards, but a little bit of gray, but mostly white. And I find that what Regina said about Snow in this last week's episode about them being hypocrites is completely true. They will never accept her, and the thing about it too, that would be fine if it was just done that way. If it really came to a point where, like, even after all Regina did, they were just kind of like, no, I don't like her, she tried to kill me, I don't trust her, boop boop. Because that's what I feel like should happen. I feel like Snow White keeps trying to, like, go to Regina and make Regina be good, and make Regina be good. Like, she doesn't like you. She despises you. During her execution, she said that she wished she had finally killed you. Why are you pining so hard for this woman to be the lady that saved you from a horse? Like, we don't see Snow White and Regina's relationship at all to see what facilitates Snow White having such strong feelings for Regina as any kind of pseudo-parental figure. They have no relationship. At least on that we've seen as an audience, besides, you know, the one time where she saved her. It's like, so that's it? That one interaction suddenly filled that mother void, and now you care for her in a deep kind of way? It's just not really done well. And until we see why Snow feels that way for Regina, it just seems, you know, it seems more like she wants Regina to be good on her terms more than wanting Regina to be good. And then things will happen, like, even, like, what really annoyed me was, like, they knew that Regina had been framed after the fact, and Emma takes Henry. They don't tell Regina. They don't let Regina know that, oh yeah, we figured out that you're innocent. No, nothing. And then when Regina does come up, even though we as the audience know she's evil, they're like, I doesn't have to tell you anything about where Henry is. Think, people, think. I mean, this is what I don't understand about these people. They're so stupid. You want her to be good. You know, one of the only things keeping her good is her relationship with Henry, and yet you just jerk him away from her constantly. You don't think that would make her, like, snap? You don't think that would trigger her to think, if you guys were gone, I'd have my son back? I mean, they just don't think, and they want her to be the bigger person. But when has she ever been the bigger person? She doesn't like you. She's the evil queen. And yes, she's trying, and I feel like this, if they're going to make her, like, try, it has to be there just completely like, no, don't care, no fucks given, and then have her work that way from there. Just, if they go from that point, work away, it'd be so much better than them being like, hey, Regina, you want to be good? Here's Henry. Oh, no, you can't have him. Emma's with him, whatever, bye. It just, it's not written in a very, it's not written, at least to me, in a way that makes you care about the Charmings. It just makes them look like hypocrites and assholes because they're trying to put themselves on a pedestal that they don't really deserve. Meanwhile, you get Rumpelstiltskin, who kind of manages to get away with a lot of shit. I mean, Rumpelstiltskin is directly and indirectly responsible for almost everything bad that happened to them in the fairy tale world because of his interactions with Regina. And then some other stuff that he did on his own. And yet, he's allowed to travel with Henry. He's allowed, you know, all this kind of free time because people are afraid of him. Regina is just as bad. Regina is also infamous. People were afraid of her as well. But yeah, Rumpelstiltskin can just coast away. You know, Bay can hate his father and run after him, but when Rumpelstiltskin gets hurt, all of a sudden, it's like Papa. because they're blood. But when it's Regina, it's like, oh, whatever. Henry, I honestly don't think Henry cares about her. Like, sometimes they'll make it seem that way, like, he'll, like, talk to her, but to me, it doesn't really seem like he actually gives that many fucks about her. And it'd be one thing if they made it seem like that was just equated solidly. Like, just let him be that way. Let him just not care. But now they want to always make it back and forth, like, oh, no, he really does care, but he just doesn't. No. One way or the other. You can't have this jerking back and forth, because it just makes the characterization inauthentic. I don't know what these characters want, because they do one thing, they say one thing, and then do another, and then what am I supposed to get from that? And you know, Russell Wilson can go do all this shit, and Belle will defend him up the ass. Like, that's what frustrates me about Belle as a ship. It's just like, does Belle get this amount of stuff that he's done badly in his 300 years on this earth? On their earth? Does she know? Because it doesn't seem like she does, because she puts him on such a pedestal, like, you're really good, you're really that. Where have you seen that? You were in a contained environment with him. You only saw him lose his temper. You never really saw him be the dark one. And yet we're supposed to believe her side of who he is because of what? We see him kill his wife for petty reasons. We see him basically break Regina emotionally, manipulate her, come off as really perverted words. I wouldn't be surprised if they had sex. If they had sex, I'd be like, that's super creepy, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. Him basically emotionally manipulating her to become the evil queen, making the curse, all this kind of stuff, but it's like, oh no, he's really good and kind. It's like, he beat the shit out of your father, but you don't seem to care about that. It just makes her look dumb. And it's like, I want to like Belle so much more than I do, but it just seems like they want her to be so much of the love interest and not her own person. And it frustrates me because she has so much potential to be better, but she just gets regulated into being like, Rumple, you can do good, you're better than this. But we don't, like, yes, he's changed and he's not, you know, a completely dark character, but it's like they don't make me feel like he should be a romantic lead. Like, I don't see why that's there. I feel like if they were going to do that, make him like, you know, a kind of Bluebeard-ish character. He's not the Beast. He's not that character, because the Beast is not supposed to be a murderer, you know? And I don't think in any incarnation of Beauty and the Beast, like, he ever really is. So I don't understand why they did this and thought it would work well, because in my opinion, I know a lot of people ship Rumple, no disrespect to them, like, that's ship and let ship, do you guys. But I feel like the ship has a lot of problematic things that are never addressed in the show that makes me kind of like, you want us to be true love, but you don't give Belle all the information for her to make that choice on her own, and that frustrates me as a viewer. Cora is awesome. I can't wait to see more of her story in the Miller's daughter. I hope it's badass. I hope so much that Rumple's the one that ruined their relationship. Like, I know they're going to make it Cora. It made me want to feel bad for Rumple, but whatever. It hasn't worked so far, so we'll see what happens. But I just think she's really great, and Rose McGowan is going to be there. Loved her from Charmed, so I'm excited to see her. So that'll be cool. The Charmings, they're so bland as characters because the writers don't want to take risks with them. With Snow White, with this upcoming episode, they might, but I feel like it's going to be jerked back a lot. Hopefully it won't be, because I think like this kind of like pure black and white thing that they have going on for them doesn't benefit them at all. I feel like, you know, I'm waiting for Snow to stop being such a passive viewer of what's bad happening. It's like she's like one of those people who sees an accident happening, is sad about it, but did nothing to prevent it, did nothing to actually help it. I mean, the fact that she, like, the whole part of when, like, she gets a spell on Regina, and Regina can't hurt them anymore. They're like, oh, you can't hurt me anymore, no matter, so it doesn't matter if I kill you or not. She still could kill other people. She still could hurt thousands of other people. And you know, the thing about it, too, is just, like, to compare the Charmings to Superman, because I love Superman. I understand why Superman doesn't kill people, and Batman, because they work outside of the law, they work outside of, you know, the authority, and especially with Superman, who is an alien, for him to go across that line and become a god being, it would give them too much authority. Charming and Snow White are just king and queen. They don't have any special powers. They're not that important as out of their own little world and their own little kingdom. They don't have any magical powers, like I said before. And these are people who have directly ruined their lives consistently. Why not get rid of them? In the actual fairy tale of Snow White, they kill the evil queen. Like, I don't understand why they have this desire to make them so pure that they do stupid stuff that endangers everybody else's lives. except their own. And then they're like, I can't believe this is happening. This is so tragic. If you had killed her, this never would have happened. But they never get any responsibility for it because like they're so good. They just wanted to help be the better people and whatever. Yeah, and by being the better people, they've made all this stuff happen at the same time. And the only thing I'm hoping for as the season progresses is for the finally to have like people of color in the show that aren't servants or die off. Like, I was so excited when they were gonna have like Black Lancelot, like, yes, I see black man, get that, get it. What happens? He's dead. He's actually Korra the entire time, and the only thing he actually does is help Charming and Snow White in his episode when he is alive. Then you get Mulan, who helps everyone else, who gets beaten by Snow White in battles. What? Can't even. And then when the episode with Belle, when they meet, so Belle can read Chinese, which makes sense because she's dealing with like dude bro Neanderthals, so she's like, yeah, you guys don't know anything. But Mulan, who is Chinese, can't read Chinese, doesn't have the book that you have, she doesn't have, was there only one copy? Like, it's like, and then Mulan gets one scratch on her leg, she can't fight, had to send Belle out to go save the village. Standard. And then, you know, Sydney, gone, he was a servant, he's gone. Gus, I forget his name, Billy or whatever he was in the real world, you know, a minor character that no one gives a shit about gets turned into like a black guy. He gets killed off by Red Riding Hood, Ruby, whatever the hell her name is. And then, you know, that's it. Everyone else is like dead or non-existent, or doesn't matter. Then we get now is Neil's girlfriend. Let's see how long that lasts. Tamara. Just, that's the one thing about Once Upon a Time. Like, they have literally like no minority characters, and just like, and every time they do, they're either like servants or they die. It's like, thanks. All you have is Lana Parrilla, and you know, who identifies as Latina, and you know, which makes it everything worse because then you have this Latina woman against this entire white family, and like she's the evil one, and they're all doing this stuff, and like she's like this weird nan to her own son. It's just so many undertones. It's just so frustrating. This show is just frustrating, but I love it. I can't stop watching it. It has its hooks in me, despite it. Oh, and Hook, can he go? Seriously, can you leave? He's the most useless man on the face of the earth. He gets destroyed by bookshelves, by like fucking everybody. Everybody. His entire purpose there is to get beat up by women, which, you know, is like, and to be hot. That's it. He serves no other purpose. And you know what? Hot is great and all, but like, he's not even anything like Captain Hook in the story, so like, why are you even there? Anyway, Once Upon a Time. Love it, but it drives me crazy. Cannot wait for The Miller's Daughter. Korra!